Great. Okay, let's do it. So yeah, more songs. No, not yet. Maybe, let's see. Right. Yeah, welcome to this session. We're coming to an end at SUGCON. It's not the end yet, but yeah, and it's great that so many people are here. Today, I would like to talk about Sitecore Components. It's probably the freshest thing we have coming, I would say. I even got the last deployment this week, so that I can show you also this feature to integrate everything into Pages. So yeah, let's get things going. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sebastian. I'm a developer advocate. I spent all my life, or professional life, in IT so far, and since 8 years I'm working with Sitecore products, and now, yeah, I'm doing this composable journey as well within Sitecore. So the things I want to go through today is, of course, clarifying what Sitecore Components is actually. We've seen slides on Symposium. We've seen some slides yesterday, I think, shown by Dave. But I would really like to show you the product, so we go on a hands-on demo how it looks today on production. Let's pray to the demo god that all that goes well. And so we will actually create a component together. We will also use that component in Pages, so that's the deployment I got this week. And we will also use external data sources to fetch data actually from another data source and show that in our components. And then I also would like to clarify the question like what that means for us as developers, right? So because it's a lot of visual editing and yeah. Yeah, one disclaimer, as it is, as fresh is currently available in early access, I think since this week, and things might change what you see here until it's generally available, but still I think it's a good possibility to have a look how it actually looks. So maybe to set the scene a bit, right? When we talk about components, we should be all on the same page. And well, components are UI or visual building blocks that we can use to assemble our websites or web shops or whatever, right? And we exchange the data behind, but the UI stays more or less the same. So that's what I understand as a component. And that's also what Sitecore Components understands as a component. So, so Sitecore Components is actually a front-end as a service. What you see is what you get component builder for XM Cloud. So a lot of terms, a lot of abbreviations. And what you can do, I mentioned that already, you can not only build a component, just a UI block with fixed data, but you can also pull in data from somewhere else. That can be products from us, like Content Hub, or Content Hub 1. This can be anything that offers a REST endpoint or a graphical endpoint. So you can pull in data basically from everywhere. And along with that, as we have a visual UI design builder, we also need to style our components. So Sitecore Components comes with a design system builder where you can define your fonts and where you can define paddings and stuff like that. So all you need to actually make your components look as required. And then, yeah, last but not least, of course, those components are reusable across wherever you use them, right? So you centrally manage them in Sitecore Components and you use them in XM Cloud, but you can also use them somewhere else. We will all see that. I'm just getting slowly into it. So, well, Sitecore Components is mainly divided into 3 areas. Well, it is 4, but let's talk about the main 3 first. So on the one hand, we have the component builder, where we actually assemble our components. And then we have, as mentioned just the slide before, we have our style section, which is the design system that we can use and build upon. And then we have the data sources section, obviously, to configure what data sources we want to pull in via REST or via GraphQL. We also have a publishing section, so all our components can be published and follow a certain workflow. We will also talk about that. I just thought 3 points are looking better than 4. Yeah, so let's start with the component builder. So in the component builder, and yeah, it's a promise, we don't go only through slides, right? I'm just introducing everything. So in the component builder, yeah, we can organize our components, we can build our components. So to organize our components, we can use collections. So we start creating a collection and then place or create the components inside a collection to actually, yeah, separate them a bit by meaning, by requirement set, so that it doesn't get too crowded the more components we create. And then, right. So, and each component, like when we actually build a component, each component can be assembled of several elements. So that can be links or images or sections or cards. So kind of elements like molecules, design molecules or design atoms that we can use to assemble our components like shown here on the slide. Another nice thing is that we can have component versions. So whomever worked with SXA before, they map well with variants, I would say. So SXA variants. So we can, on the one hand, we can have UI variations of the same content, saying like, I need this component with maybe a different background image, or I need to turn the colors slightly into something else. But we can also handle responsiveness with it. So if we think the background image doesn't fit because it has a certain setting, like there's someone on the right side, and if I could just crop it to the center or something like that, then this person is no longer on the photo. So we can use a different design or a different image to display it on smaller devices, for example. Right. About the design system. So, yeah, we can define the design system through a visual design builder. So there's actually no code involved or CSS styling involved. Well, that happens behind the scene, but it's hidden behind the UI. And the whole process of building the design system for your components can be seen as building a house. Right, so we start... yeah, that's the animation about it. So we start with the basics and follow basically the workflow from top to bottom, right? So we start with the basics, like defining the fonts, defining the colors we want to use. We define we define icon sets or certain graphics that we want to use. That's not necessarily the graphics we use in the component, like not background images or images, but more like icon sets, I would say. And then we can also define the breakpoints. Like they are set as default to the Bootstrap breakpoints, but there might be requirements where you need something else, right? So you can override them, but it's preset for use. You can directly start using that. So it maps kind of, if I take the analogy with the house, it maps a bit like, okay, so these are the bricks we've chosen to build the house, but now we need to use cement to glue the bricks to walls, right? And therefore, we go one step further and then define the typography. So we take the fonts we have defined before and add certain sizes that we see that we need to use along with those fonts and that make up the typography. Or we can define decorations, like our boxes or cards need to have certain background images, or sorry, background colors that we have defined before. We just use them now to define backgrounds of our cards, or we can define if they actually should have rounded edges or if they should have any drop shadow, something like that. And last but not least, here in the rules section, we have the spacing. So we define basically the paddings or margins that should be available to our components, right? So that everything is as it is in our style guide that we use also for other applications or websites or web shops. So the next thing is, we're building the walls, right? So we're building actually the elements that we can use on our components builder. So on the one hand, we have text elements like paragraphs or headlines. And again, we are using the typography we've set up before and then define the text elements that we want to use. And we can also add then the text colors that we need, maybe white text or whatever you need, right? And then we have inline elements such as buttons or badges. And again, we're using the decorations that we've defined before and so on. So everything comes together now to the elements that we actually want to use. And last but not least, we have block elements like cards and sections. And also here we use what we have defined before and bring it together so that we have an actual card that we can use or our authors and marketers can use to build up the components. Now, last but not least, we can bundle all of the elements we have defined so far in so-called themes. So a theme defines what text elements and what inline and block elements are available in a certain theme. And that helps us, when we define a component, we can switch also a theme, right? So that's now a house that we can apply. And even with with the same walls, we could build a different house, right? We can assemble the walls differently, and then we have a different house, kind of. I'm not a craftsman. Anyway, so we can have a dark theme or we can have a light theme, right? So we just apply that to the component, and then the colors change and everything that is connected to that. And now we enter the fourth area, which I did not show on the initial slide. So that's a section of publishing. So we can publish, or the marketer can follow a certain workflow to review their components and then publish it actually so that they are available live. We know that from XP or XM or also, other systems. So the main workflow is that we start in a draft state, and then we can put it in a staged state, which is required to actually see our components then later on in pages. But they're not published, so they are not available yet for the public. So that would be the next step, to actually publish them. We can go back in the state, like we can say, well, it has been published, but I'm taking it back, so I unpublish it. So it comes in kind of a staged state, but we have a dedicated state for that, so it's previously staged, for example. So all of the gray tiles you see around the colored ones are the states in between when we move components between the different states. So you always know if a component has been published before, if it has been changed while it was published already, and so on. So all that is basically shown in that kind of workflow. Great, so enough of slides. Let's actually do the demo. Oh, I put this here, and I put this here. Great. So I'm in Accent Cloud. And I have a site here, that's the SUGCON Malaga site. It's based on the Foundation starter kit, so it's a skate park site. And if I switch to Tools and open Components, and hope the internet connection works. Okay, let's not wait for that. So I have open component here already. Weird. So I have open components here already, and what we want to do is we want to create a component, right? So I told you the main sections or main areas of components are at the top here. So we have components, we can define our design system and styles, the data sources, and then publish something. So what I want to do is I want to add a new collection just for this. For the sake of the SUGCON, so I call it SUGCON Malaga. Save it. Oh, damn it. Collection added, there we go. Yeah, let's add a new component. So I call that Hero Teaser. I can give it a description. I can select, I'm creating it now in the SUGCON Malaga collection, but I could also say, well, oh, that was the wrong one. I move it to any of the other collections I've created before. Well, I'm not going to do that, but just say I create the component and start the editing process. So I can tell you it's way faster than it appears now. It's definitely the internet connection. Here we go. So you see we have a canvas here, and we can add now elements to it. So the elements we have defined, and I've defined already some so that we can just start. And what I want to do is I want to recreate this hero component that we have on Sitecore.com. So what I will do is, first I add a card, which holds then the text that we see. So we use a block element and the card, and just drop it here. So now the card is full width, but we want to make it like kind of half width. So I'm going back to the section, which is my white canvas, and I'm saying that I want to separate that into 2 columns. You visually see that here, that I do that. And now my card has half width. Okay. Let's try that, thanks. It should be here, no. There we go.
Disable the wireless.
I'm still in wireless, but... Okay, I just continue. So what I want to do is, the easiest way is just to go back to this one here and just copy it. Because I can copy basically from everywhere, and it keeps the styles. So I'm just dropping that here. Wait. Damn it. I think I dropped it in the wrong... Whoa. So I'm sorry, I'm currently in this section, so I need to move to the card. Let me just add the card again and drop it here, so that looks better. So now I will add a button. So it's an inline element, and drop it underneath, add to the end of the card, and I will also add an image. Right, so I go back to the section and add an image, which is here. And what I want to do is I actually want to use the image that we find on Sitecore.com. So I go and check the URL of the image. And I find it here. I could upload an image as well. Not really. Come on. So, sorry. Going back here. And I just used the image from a different URL. So here we go. And I see that I did a mistake. I dropped it in the card, so let me just do that one more time. Add the image, and I want to have it here. That looks better. Here we go. Now, we saw it should be a background image, right? So it shouldn't be just, well, we could keep it like that, but that was not the target, so I just say it's a background image. Right, it looks pretty much as it should be. However, not exactly, and I've prepared another theme that I want to use now. So if I go here and wait, oh no, sorry. If I go here to the default theme, I'm now applying my previously prepared dark theme, which makes it pretty much look like we have it on the website within, yeah. Well, usually in a few seconds with enough sacrifices to the demo gods. Right. Great. So we can stage the component and we can publish the component. So now we have a component that we can use in several areas. Right. Let's go back to the slides. Right. And let's use our new component in Pages. So it's here. So the Pages editor has a native integration with Sitecore Components. So our components appear directly next to the components we used to use in Pages, so the ones we build with SXA or just natively build with XM Cloud so we have a second tab now, which is the front-end as a service tab, aside our normal components, and this is where our components appear, and we just drag and drop them onto the screen and build basically our websites with it. We can mix it with other SXA components or other components and just have some Sitecore components in between or SXA components as we need that. So let's also use that. So I've started pages here already. Well, it doesn't look like. Yeah, great. So as I said, we have a front-end as a service tab and we have a components tab. So in the front-end as a service tab, if I refresh and the internet, yeah, that's faster. We see that we now have our SUGCON Malaga collection, so all the components are sorted into our collections, which makes it also easier to find them the more we have, right? So we can collapse the other ones if we don't need that, and we find in the SUGCON Malaga collection the component that we actually need. So the hero teaser, and we just drag and drop this as we used to do that. So it's getting loaded, and here's basically our new component, and we can also preview that and have our component in our normal SXA website in this case. That's all. That's as simple as it shows, right? We just drag and drop it. Yeah. Right, so let's go back to the slides. Okay, so that was a simple component. Cost me a lot of nerves here on stage. But let's actually build something with external data sources. Let's see how that goes. So with external data sources, just to repeat that, we can import from any source. So as long as there's a REST API, which gives us a JSON, or wherever we have a GraphQL endpoint, we can pull that in. So that may be Content Hub 1, but that could be also ChatGPT or XM Cloud or any PIM, for example. So the data sources feature currently allows to fetch data once, and that will be improved. So you will see that on the roadmap, that also the data sources stay in sync, right? So whenever we have configured a connection to a certain third-party system, that we can keep synced live basically to the data. So whenever we change something in Content Hub 1, we also want to see that wherever the component is used. Currently, it's a one-time fetch, and then we map it, and I will show that exactly now. So let's go back to the right. So what we want to do first is we want to configure our data sources. You see, I have configured already some, but let's just try a new one. So we call that SUGCON, well, nearly. SUGCON recipes. It's not connect recipes, but it's just real recipes. So if you get hungry, that might happen. So what we will use for it is we will need to, so I want to get data now from Content Hub 1. So I have a Content Hub 1 instance, and what I need is a URL for the endpoint, and then I also need to configure the API key. And then fetch the data and use the data in another component that I will create in a minute. Great. So let me just get my nodes. That should be it. So I'm using this endpoint, and in the header, I create a new attribute, which I need to connect to Content Hub 1. I will delete this API key after the session, so you need to be quick in order to connect and try. So, nearly. Great. So the next thing we need to do is actually build our GraphQL query. This is what we do in the body, and I use the Content Hub 1 GraphQL IDE for it. So I've prepared already a query here. So I have recipes in my Content Hub 1 instance, and I query them using the all recipe, and then get the results of the list of recipes. So the result looks like that, which seems to be fine. So I have here some delicious pizza, some whatever recipes, and I just copy this query here into components. So do it like that and fetch the data. There we go. So components identified all the fields that we have available, and it basically made a fetch to get the JSON response. So I saved that and go back into the component builder and build a new component. So we call that recipe, save that, and start editing. Now I will place a card again, just here. I want an image in the card. That's what we have here, inside the card. And I also want some text, like a headline 3 maybe. I add it at the end. And I also want some text as a paragraph just after that. So for all the SXA fans, that looks pretty much like a promo component. And I'm going back now and say that I want to use that with my data collection, so with a data source I have prepared. So I go on my card and say, well, I actually want to repeat that map to my collection of data. And here I can select now the one that I created. So this is the SUGCON recipes. And I say it should be the results, so the list of results of recipes. And what you can see is it already replicates it. So, but it doesn't look good. So let's go to the section and say we actually want to have 3 in a row. And it looks odd to have a 4th one or a 5th one. We can't control that, how many results we have. Or we could, but I haven't done that. So therefore we say on the data collection, we actually say that we want to limit it to 3. So that looks better. Now, it's not the data we have, right? So it's just random data displayed here. So we're going to change that in order to actually use the data sources we have. No, I don't want to leave that side now. There we go. It's autosave. It saved my life. So we want to map that data. And I go now and select an image source. So we want to map the image, and it's a SUGCON recipe, so that has been predefined here already. And I need the, I need the image URL, which I don't see here. Yeah, I need to check. Let's go for the other ones first and fix it later. No, that's wrong. So here we go. We want a text, we want to map it, and we want to say it's our recipe title. Here we go. That's proper data. And now we want to map that as well, and we want to have our description text. So here we go as well, and let's go to the data sources and see if we actually have. We have a file URL here. So that looks pretty much okay. ID, file URL, it should be there. Let's go back to the component and see if it's image source, mapped, SUGCON recipes. What do you mean? Maybe. Okay, we need to live without images. I'm sorry. But I hope you get the point, right? So we have replicated now based on the data we have replicated the data coming from Content Hub 1 We fetch the data and show it here in our component, and now we can go the same path, publish the component, and use it basically in XM Cloud and display it based on data coming from somewhere else. Right. So the next thing, going back to the slides again. Oh, we're already there. Perfect. So even though Sitecore Components is a SaaS application, and you want to look probably also a bit behind the curtain, because usually we want to know how things work out to make better decisions on how it fits into the landscape of our clients, right? And that's what we want to do now. So Sitecore Components is actually a separate application, as you can see here, and it delivers also the component separately. So it's independent of XM Cloud, even though we have this native integration of XM Cloud. So it delivers, with publishing, it delivers all the components to the CDN layer and geographically distributes basically the delivery. And on the XM Cloud side, just taking that as an example, XM Cloud delivers everything via Edge through the GraphQL endpoint. So we build our UIs in Pages and import our components, but what happens behind the scenes is we use the Sitecore components, web components that we embed into our UI, basically. So it's just a tag that we embed, and then it delivers everything to our rendering host and renders it out based on the app that we have created. And then client-side, it loads the web component from the CDN. So we embed just a tag, and then get everything client-side loaded. So what you will see when you actually inspect this component, you see the front-end as a service component tag. So that's actually what we get from in Pages, and then we have a library ID, which is the ID of the component itself, and everything is then rendered during runtime on the client. So everything that you see inside of the tag, like the divs and styles and stuff like that, comes then client side. Now we're going to change that or add the option to also have it all server-side generated or server-side rendered, but at the moment this is what we have right now. So this is client-side rendered. So there is the native integration with XM Cloud, but you can use also today already those components with any other applications. And therefore we have the option in the builder to export the actual React code and the embed code that you need to use somewhere else in other applications that don't run with XM Cloud, for example. And you can handle and you can maintain all components centrally then from Sitecore Components, and wherever you use them, they update instantly on because you have a central maintenance, basically. Right. So it's all pretty, what you see is what you get, marketer focused. That's true. So what's in for developers and what's our to do here? So what we've seen is that we can build kind of simple components, like a hero banner or something like that. So we just display data, which is also something we don't want to do all day long. And where we are definitely needed is to build custom logic, to build interactions, and also do integrations. Well, we've seen that we can do integrations with components, but as of today, it has limitations. It will come the next weeks and months in the upcoming releases. Right. You will see on the roadmap that I will share in a few slides that there will be a lot of developer experience improvements coming. So currently it's focusing on the marketer persona, but the developer persona is integrated bit by bit later on. We will see that on the roadmap. On the other hand, you've seen, we didn't go to the styles section in detail, but this is something I don't see a marketer using or like doing. It's more something for a designer or front-end developer to define all the styles and make that so a marketer can actually work on what he's good on and focus on creating content and good experiences. And then also the whole data source configuration is probably also nothing a marketer would do. That's where I see us as backend or former backend developers sneaking in and do that for them. Now, summarizing, I would say Sitecore Components is a great new front-end as a service solution. And we've seen that it's front-end as a service. Is what you see is what you get. Component builder. We have configurable data sources. We can do the design system. Just repeating myself a bit, but and we have reusable components that we can use basically everywhere. We have a very simplified component creation process where we give more into the hands of marketers for sure. And from what we've seen right now, it's a no-code approach. That will change also. So we will find on the roadmap, we will find that you can write components and you can write your own code and bring it into Sitecore Components. And yeah, it's all centrally managed, just to repeat that again, which is great. Now, we have great documentation out there already. If you want to check out more, if you're interested, I hope you got interested now, check out the documentation. It's not big, but it's great. I mean, it answered all my questions, so probably it will also answer all your questions. Should I go back? Sorry. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So talking about the roadmap a little bit. So I mentioned several times that there will be developer experience and it is coming. So the idea is that you can bring your own code to the components and you're even able to have your locally built component and preview it in Sitecore Components. There will be a React SDK that we can use in order to build out your components. And feature-wise, we will have the data sources in sync. So currently it's just a one-time fetch. We can fetch it again for sure to update it, but there should be an option to keep it in sync. So whenever we have something changed in the target system, it also updates in our component. We will have the full server-side generation and server-side rendering support. Currently it's just client-side. And you will be able to use your custom CSS and upload it basically into Sitecore Components and handle it like that as well. So, not sure if I missed something, but yeah, let's just find out, right? Do you have questions? Wow. Or maybe wait for the mic.
Okay, I've got like 1,000 questions, but...
Okay, let's start with the first one.
With the first one. For example, our front-end team, they use Figma, and I know that lots of people use Storybook as well. Is there any plan to integrate doing the actual style guide on Figma or Storybook and push that into components?
I'm not aware of. I hope this gets handled with the CSS integration. I'm looking into the red shirt section.
We are a little bit considering it, but there is no clear answer if we are doing that or not.
Thank you. Thank you.
The question about data fetching. So, what is the life cycle of data fetching? So, do you pull the data all the time, or do you store that?
No, so currently it's fetched in the moment we click the fetch button, and that's it. So we store the static JSON that we got from that system, and then have it stored and use that with our components. So it's a one-time fetch. This is what we're going to change and offer a second option to keep it in sync. I haven't seen how this is going to look like. That's what it's on the roadmap. So I'm pretty sure there will be something where you can actually say how often you want to fetch new data or something like that, because we still want to cache that and don't stay dependent on the actual source system. Yeah, but not seen yet.
Okay. You didn't mention a lot about the styles.
Yeah.
So the question, is it or will it be possible to start with a clone style or a theme or something like that? Or do we always have to start from scratch?
No. So yeah, there is something in. So it will be pre-filled already. So when you provision your XM Cloud instance, then you have components available, and it will be provisioned with some default data, like I mentioned, with the breakpoints. So there is the bootstrap breakpoints already, and there is some setup and spacing and stuff also already available. And then you take it from there. So you could directly start in the component builder and try out and build your component, and then come back to the style section and say, okay, and now I want to actually make this component look like I want to look it, or how it should look like. Well, maybe we handle it afterwards, or I can just quickly jump into the style section because I didn't show that. Do you want to see the style section? Yeah, that's enough. Yes. Okay. Then let's switch to the quickly to the, and we come back to questions, or do you just join me afterwards? Right. Yeah. So if we go into the style section and if we zoom in a bit again. So what you see here is we have the fonts, so the basics that I explained. Fonts, we can define colors, right? So I have already defined colors, and you would just say, you can organize them again in collections. That's what you find all across Sitecore Components, right? So that's the collections. And if I just add a color here, I can give it a name, and let's say that's SUGCON. And I don't know all hex codes by heart, but that's probably white, I think. Let's just try and see what we get when we type in this. So that should be a color. So it's blue. Interesting. Yeah. So, but that's how it works, right? You have your design style guides, and you would say, well, I need those hex or RGB codes to be used here, and then you type it in. You can give it a certain opacity here already, if you need to, and then close that and have your SUGCON color added here. And that's basically the process that you always have here. Same with the fonts. So if you go to the fonts and want to add a font, currently we only support Google fonts, but there will be also other fonts and custom fonts available as well. So that's the starting point at the moment. Well, this is the predefined breakpoints, for example. So if that doesn't work out for us, we just change that, we delete them, we create new ones, whatever fits our requirements. And then in the typography, we can add typographies. So that's where the stuff we've defined in the basics come together, and we can do more. So let's say we need a SUGCON font type, typography. So we choose from the font types we have defined up front, so we don't have to select from the big list of available Google fonts or custom fonts and say maybe this is the one we want to use. And we can even say then it should be a certain font size. So maybe it should be 12 pixel. We can define a line height, a letter spacing, a paragraph spacing. That all results into certain CSS in the background, right? We can also say, yeah, whatever is available with CSS, so we can have a camel case or all capital or all smaller case and so on. Well, let's save that. Yeah, so that's how the process is right now. And as shown on the roadmap, there will be a process to handle your custom CSS as well, to not only work here in this editor. I think that would be handy for design people, but for developers, we usually work in something that we can store also in our source code repository. I hope that answers the question a bit. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I remember when we saw this in Symposium.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of talk about this sort of replacing SXA components, and what I'm seeing here, it's not editable in Pages at all, based upon the interface. Is there a plan to make these, CMS ready?
I know there is a plan to make that editable from Pages, for example. I haven't put it on the roadmap because it's probably further down the road. Again, looking into that direction.
It's early, right? So there's things absolutely coming to make it enterprise grade. And I think maybe to join back to the first question, we've been interviewing partners and customers. We know that we need to be able to store. Partners generally start with their own base components written in their own code styles. So that's a key. When we talk about developer experience, we'll be able to import the base components and use them in components from an external system. Similarly for styles, all Figma, Storybook, all of those things are absolutely recognized that for us to scale in the deployments and the partners that we work with, they're just must-haves, right? On the description of the metadata, So we want to be able to publish certain fields, define certain fields within the editor, and then publish them so that they're available to the pages interface. And actually, behind the scenes, we're going to use the SXA Rails, the SXA metadata, to be able to describe that to the pages interface. So that's the kind of the additional building blocks that we'll be adding pretty quickly, actually, over the next couple of months to make this more bulletproof.
Okay, months is better than years.
Yeah, no, it's coming. It's like every week there's a new release, so it's coming quick. This is an evolving product.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think it's 4 p.m. Yeah. So if you have questions, I'm around. Just come to me.